It's not super great for him. He's going to get pushed into his base. He's not going to be able to use the kite.
But Denver has the advantage of these hedgehogs being super fast and agile. He's throwing in some dogs in there to tank. The reason he has
for Captain Alex, and he has these fast-moving vectors, so he's able to do a lot, and he's getting a lot of good. Welcome to Stormgate. I am your host, Korak, and today's map is Jagged Maw. I am joined today by Prime Scout.
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
Quick item of note, this is a last-minute collab in which I drug Prime Scout kicking and screaming. It won't be as polished as my normal work, but you guys can let us know in the comments what you think and what you feel, and if you want us to do more collabs in the future. Start us off in the bottom right-hand corner of the map, wearing the blue robe, sporting the celestial gloves, we have Captain Alex. His opponent for the moment in the top right-hand corner of the map, wearing the red robes in the Vanguard gloves, we have Awers. Both fighters ready? Begin! It looks like we're already getting a Starforge, probably into some Vectors opener for the Vanguard faction. I'm sorry, not for the Vanguard faction, for the Celestial faction. Vanguard player did get it scouted, Errors did get it scouted. If you were in this particular game and you saw the Starforge, what would be your initial thought? Would you expect Vanguards right off the bat as a Vanguard player, Prime?
Yeah, so anytime they're going Starforge, they have two options. You're looking at either the Vector or the Scythe, and more often than not, it's going to be the Vector to do some creeping. And so the best thing you're going to want to do as the Vanguard player is going to be taking your own camps on your side.
That does appear to be what Awers is doing it. I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. That's a different name for me. He is grabbing his camp, his HP camp that's, from my experience, I know it's not the easiest camp to kill, but from what I understand, that's one of the best ones to grab because obviously you can run back and forward and heal. I know for the Celestial faction, and just for anyone who has like stronger like individual units than say the dogs early on, we'll go for the flowers instead since the Vanguards take a little bit longer to build. We might actually get our first little engagement over here between the dogs and the Vanguards. I'm not sure the Vanguards win this, but we'll get to see what happens here.
No, he's definitely going to have to pull out of this. It looks like he's just going to try and get a few more camps and then run, which is the smart play because those Vectors, they do bonus to light units and the dogs are light units. And so Captain Alex here is going to be doing a lot of damage to those dogs.
Okay, so eventually if Awers gets the upgrade, then they'll do bonus damage to each other because it's plus, what, 16 when they get those claws?
That's correct. It's plus 16 to the base damage, so a total of 24. Yeah.
Getting some small early harassment over here by Captain Alex. Captain Alex doing a very good job. One thing I did want to ask as well is, do you get Luminite per camp you kill, or do you get Luminite for taking the tower? Like, how does the Luminite gain happen while you're in game?
Yeah, so it's per camp, so each one of those little green guys there, he's going to give you 40. In the newest patch, they've reduced it, so it's only 30. But during this current replay, we're looking at 40 per green monster.
Okay. That's definitely good to know, and it looks like these Vectors are definitely dipping into the speed tower. If I remember correctly, too, the speed tower also gives you a passive speed buff. I'm not sure if that's to all units. I know the units that go into it get a 30-second like overall buff, but I was reading somewhere, whether it's correct or not, that they do get that passive buff. Do you know if that is a thing or if that's just word on the wire?
Yeah, so all the camps in the game give different buffs depending on which ones they are. So that health camp there, it's going to be giving passive regen in addition to the ability to stand in the circle and get very active bonus regen. But all the while that you control that camp, similar to the speed camp, you're going to be getting bonuses. So additional health regen, additional speed, additional luminite, those sorts of things.
Okay, and it looks like we're actually getting our first upgrade. He is going into the claws for his dogs. He's getting the I'm not even going to try that. He's going to get the claw upgrade to give him the plus 16 damage to the light units, which the mechs definitely are. I did see a lot of information, or a good chunk of information on how to wall off against certain factions. And at least when it comes to walling off, to the best of my knowledge, what I understand is there's basically only two sets of units. There's large units, which needs two squares to go in between, and then there's light units. The one thing I don't know is with these units getting their bonus to light factions, is it only the units that have light actually in there? And actually, we get our first little bit of engagement over here. We're getting the vectors and get the immediate blink out. The dogs are still after them. I think they can come out on top of that if they cannot get sandwiched. One of the biggest things with those dogs is if they can surround the vectors. The vectors are out of a blink and they're in sort of a bad spot right now, but maybe they are trying to use the line of sight to grab a couple of ones. And oh no, actually, a vector might actually get caught here over here by the dogs. I'm not sure there's much you can do. Even if you can blink out, those dogs are still pretty fast and they're going to keep up with it. There it is. There is one kill for Ayers. That's not going to win him the game or anything like that, but those small little tit for tats are going to make a difference further on. And sorry about that, Prime, back to what I was asking you earlier. So when it comes to those damage upgrades, like for the claws, do you know how Stormgate breaks up what is constituted as a light unit? Will it just say it, or is there more to it than just clicking on the unit to see if it says light or heavy?
It's more so just clicking on it and seeing if it's light or heavy. You can intuit most of the units. So the Exo is light, and that's because he doesn't have much armor. The Lancer, he's heavy. He's got a lot of bulk armor. Similarly, the Vulcan, he's heavy. He's, big, strong mech. And those vectors there, they've got very little armor. And so you can kind of intuit your way through it, but there's no clear distinction as to whether a unit's tagged as light or not.
Okay, so it's just pure game knowledge.
Exactly.
Note for the red player for Vanguard is he's doing a very good job of controlling a large portion of the map. He has sort of dictated what Captain Alex can and can't do. Sure, he only has a handful of dogs, but keeping those vectors in check is going to be good for him, because from what I understand, the vector rush is very, very good at continuing doing that, the harassment, and I'm not sure how vectors do by themselves further on into the mid game. So right now, Ayers is building a bunch of dogs and a couple of med techs. Is that what you would be doing, Prime, or what would be, at least from your perspective, if you know he's going into all of these vectors, are you just going to hang out with the dogs, or are you going to try to transition into something else?
I actually believe this might have been a bit of a blunder from our Vanguard player, because based on the number of dogs he had compared to the number of vectors, I think he could have just taken a fight straight away with all his dogs, and he might have actually just won the game outright. If you have that speed camp, dogs are able to catch those vectors much more efficiently, and the kiting is much more difficult. And I really do think he had enough dogs to take a great trade and maybe even win the game with it. He is opting to go into medtechs, which is the proper transition. Dogs are both tagged as biological and mechanical, so they benefit from both medic's healing and the nanoswarm ability. Especially the nanoswarm ability heals 20 per second, and so he's going to be trying to do that transition, and that is the proper transition into the late game.
Okay, and so as far as the med techs go, they obviously heal with their energy bar. I'm assuming that's what this game calls it. So what kind of healing can he expect to give his units once the fight begins? Like say the two med techs are up at X amount at 100% energy. How much healing can they do on a dog? Do you know those kind of numbers, or is it going to be, is this number of med techs going to be sufficient for this number of dogs in this fight? I guess what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah, so you're going to look at 50 energy per nanoswarm, which means he's going to have 2 casts available to him. The nanoswarm is an area of effect heal, and so if the dogs are kind of clumping up on each other, you're going to be able to heal all of those. He can also use it offensively. You see that one vector, he's crawling around all purple, and that deals 20 damage offensively per second. To mechanical units, and so that is an option. I prefer to use it defensively on my units to heal them. His other option is 5 energy per cast, and it heals 20 HP initially, and then it'll be healing an additional 20 HP. Looks like we got a fight starting here, though.
We actually get a little bit of engagement over here, Prime. We got some back and forward, but no one really wanting to commit right now. Ayers has the small advantage having that V5 rocket get ready, which means that Captain Alex cannot stay still whatsoever. However, the micro is here for Captain Alex, and he has these fast-moving vectors, so he's able to do a lot, and he's getting a lot of good range shots off. He's whittling down his opponent, and this is looking actually kind of unfortunate for Ayers. He lost a whole bunch of dogs almost for free. In a minute here, he's also going to lose his V5 rocket almost over nothing. I'm not sure any of the vectors were taken out in there, unless you saw, I take it back, there goes one right there from the ability you were just talking about, where he was able to eat that vector.
Yeah, I definitely think that was a rough trade. Like I mentioned earlier, you really need that speed camp to be able to chase down those vectors. Otherwise, what you saw happen is going to continue to happen, which is those vectors are going to kite and they're going to shoot and then run away and shoot and run away. And if the dogs do eventually catch them, they even got to blink to get even further away. And so you really need that speed camp when you're engaging to close out the deal and attacking.
Okay, that makes sense. One thing I was kind of curious, and I know you're primarily a Vanguard player, like I said before, but as far as Vanguard sit in the hierarchy of economy, from what I understand, the Infernals are a little bit more eco-heavy than a couple of other factions. Would you think that Celestials need to farm a little bit more and expand a little bit faster than Vanguard, or do you think Vanguard should expand faster than Celestials, even if you just know the Vanguard perspective?
I definitely feel that Celestial is able to expand a bit easier, and they're able to get those collection arrays up. Especially in the newer patch, there's a lot more HP that the collection arrays have, so it's a bit safer, and they've got a lot of static defensive options, including the Sovereign's Watch ability, and those link nodes, which can upgrade to do splash damage and single fire target damage. And so I'm thinking in more games, more often than not, you're going to be looking at Celestial out expanding the Vanguard player.
Okay, so you would normally expect them to expand quicker than the Vanguard players. From what I've kind of seen is, at least as far as what they can do, the Vanguard is kind of the vanilla faction, sort of the safe faction for a lot of people. Not that there's not commonality for people to grab different styles of units from StarCraft, because that's what these guys are going for, is a StarCraft, Warcrafty feel. And obviously the Vanguards are the Terran, but they also seem to be sort of the middle of the road from what I can see in damage and speed. Not that that's a bad thing, but that from my perspective, that's what I have been able to tell. What do you think about that? And we also actually have a little bit of Hornets moving into the Celestial base here in a minute. Probably going to go for some of these prisms, I would guess.
Yeah.
Small engagement. Sorry about that, Prime. We're getting a small engagement over here. A couple of these dogs are going to get caught off in a bad spot. They did try to get the V5 rocket, but were unable to find the purchase that they need. They're being chased down by Curies and Vectors. If Aorus is not careful, he's going to end up with a full assault on his hand. They are moving into his base. It looks like Captain Alex is finally ready to start this engagement. Everything has been moving forward into this. We've got several of these Curies moving into the opponent's base. I'm not sure if they have the upgrade just quite yet, because they are stopping moving when they die. They do not have it quite yet, but it doesn't matter. These Vectors are able to do a good amount of damage, and they're actually starting to take out Hornets left and right. This is not looking great for Ayers. He's in a rather precarious spot, and there is the GG, ladies and gentlemen. He has thrown in the towel, giving this first round, this first game, to Captain Alex. What were your thoughts on that game, as far as the Vanguard player? Where do you think Ayers went down, or went wrong from seeing everything that Captain Alex was building?
So I think he had great map control overall, and he had a very big window of opportunity when he was holding both speed camps and he had a lot of dogs, and Captain Alex hadn't transitioned into anything else yet. I think he could have attacked and traded out a lot of those vectors for his dogs, which would be a positive trade for him. But instead, he tried to gain additional camps, and he let the Celestial player gain a better economy and go into those Kree, which are very difficult to deal with. Additionally, I think he went into 2 Hangar Bay Hornet there, you can see, and Vectors do bonus to light, and unfortunately Hornets are light, and so they're going to be absolutely terrible versus those Vectors.
I think maybe his goal was that he wanted to try to snipe some of these prisms. What I've seen, at least in TANC 15, which was one of the other cups I casted, is sometimes the Vanguard player will want to grab 4 Hornets and move it into the back of the Celestial base and get a couple of these prisms. Because the prisms have a bonus to them that increases their speed the more they move. So if you can catch them initially, you can kill them relatively quickly. And that may have been his goal for it, but I don't know for sure. We can speculate all day, but we're going to move on to match number 2, Commander. I'll see you there. Welcome back, Commander. We are now in match number 2. Over here in the top left-hand corner of the map, wearing the red robes and the Vanguard gloves, we have Denver. Captain Alex has maintained his blue and maintained his Celestials. Not sure if I mentioned before, but we are on the map Lost Hope. So with a map as large as this, Prime, we see the scout obviously going for this section over here. Is there any way to know when you're up here as Vanguard where your opponent is going to spawn?
No, there's no exact way to know. Typically, how Vanguard scout is what we call an N scout, and that's because on the map it forms the shape of an N. So you go to the bottom left, and then you go to the top right, and then the bottom. Denver's just going to be doing counterclockwise here, but typically you want to do an N scout because if they're cross spawn, it's the best scenario for you as a Vanguard, as opposed to if they're closer to you.
Well, and one thing we'll get to see from this is with this being a much larger map, the vectors won't be quite as effective in doing their early harassment because it'll take them just a little bit longer if that's what Captain Alex is going to decide to go into. And one thing I also noticed is, at least against Celestial buildings, dogs don't really seem to be able to do any damage from, it looks like they heal too quickly for that to happen. So it looks like it's primarily scouting for that, or maybe trying to grab some of these camps.
Yeah, when the Celestials are in green and yellow power, they get a buff to their building regen, and they get other buffs as well, but primarily they're going to be able to avoid any type of harassment because of that energy regen, or HP regen.
Okay, and we're actually getting a little bit of a mix-up to Captain Alex's build. He's not going just purely for Vanguards. He's, I'm assuming, going to start building some Argents, or some Kree here in a little bit. I don't think the Argents will pair super well against the Vectors just because of the speed difference and with how large this map is. He's going to want those faster moving units, so maybe he'll transition into Kree and then start getting some Vectors out, but that'll be, we'll be able to see that here in a little bit. We're also getting our first natural expansion over here by the Vanguard player. It is just about complete. While it looks like... yeah, so he's been, so Captain has actually been established a little bit longer. I was thinking this was the main base for some reason, but no, that's actually the natural expansion, and he's able to grab this Luminite as well. Having those units in the air is definitely going to be a big advantage for the Celestial faction over the Vanguard. Do you, as a Vanguard player, do you find it's difficult to keep up with sort of the units and the economy of the Celestial, or how do you feel? Do you feel it's pretty balanced?
Yeah, so it is very difficult to do any type of harassment early game because those collection arrays can lift off. It really eliminates a lot of the early units that you could attack them with. And also, the collection arrays have 800 HP, which is, quite a bit, and the crystals can fly, like you mentioned. And so early game, your options are very limited, and the Celestial is going to be taking a greater economy overall as a result.
Okay, and then so what's the significance of the Vanguard players grabbing a Lancer first, building one Lancer instead of building a dog? Is it just purely for the tanking so they can soak up more of the shots where the dogs can't?
Yeah, so there's actually a strategy that the Vanguard players figured out where one Lancer can kill 4 out of 5 of the monsters at the health camp by himself. And once he kills those 4, he can promote himself based on the XP he gets, and so he can actually kill the whole camp himself. So making that Lancer first is going to allow him to clear the health camp with just that one unit.
Denver taking actually a little bit of a loss here in the beginning, losing 1 to 2 dogs. But if these Kree are not careful, they're actually going to get caught up. But no, they actually get a Lancer instead. So that's 1 to 2 dogs and a Lancer for the Kree. But I think they are stuck. Nope, yep, there goes one, and probably a second one here in a second. I'm not sure if they're going to be able to get away from the Hedgehogs whatsoever. No, they do get it. So minor engagement, I think, actually turned around for Denver. He was losing a couple more units, but I think he came out on top there in the end. And it looks like we're getting our first set of vectors by Captain Alex. And then something else I wanted to know is, how do you feel about the Trinium in the center of this map? Have you ever seen anyone try to rush for it or try to grab for it early on, or is it just not worth it?
So I haven't seen anyone go for it early. You have your third base in the pocket expansion. That also has Therium, and so typically you're good to just use those two initially. Later game, mid to late game, I do see higher level players go for it a lot, especially Infernals. If you have map control, it's a great idea. As a Vanguard, you can put down your Scrapyard when you're tier 2, which allows you, it's only 100 Luminite, and allows you to get your Bobs out there mining right away. So it can be done, yeah.
we're building up to a little bit more of an engagement, and I believe the Hedgehogs actually come out on top of this. There are a good number of Kree, but they're going to have a very, very hard time catching all of these Hedgehogs, and it looks like Captain Alex is going to get pushed out of here. He's going to turn around once he gets another unit over here, and I'm not sure. No, actually, the Hedgehogs are considered light units, so they do get a little bit of bonus damage to it, but the Micro is just here for Denver. He's just absolutely pushing out the forces of Captain Alex, controlling the center of the map. He does not, it looks like he does not actually end up grabbing the center. No, I take it back. He grabs it with the dogs instead to give himself a little bit more vision. And force-wise, at least from what you can see, does it look like Denver has the advantage with these Hedgehogs? Because these Hedgehogs seem pretty hard for the Celestials to catch.
Yeah, in a straight-up fight, Denver is going to lose pretty hard here. But Denver has the advantage of these Hedgehogs being super fast and agile. He's throwing in some dogs in there to tank. The reason he has only a couple dogs is so that the Kree roll and they activate their spin ability on the dogs rather than the Hedgehogs. That spin ability does bonus damage. It does quite a bit, and it also it increases their movement speed, obviously. And so in a straight-up fight, Denver's not able to win, but he's got that mobility advantage that's going to allow him to take scrimmages across the map and come out ahead overall.
Okay. It looks like right now we are just in the phase of the game where people are trying to grab as much of the map as they can. Denver doing a very good job of controlling a good chunk of this, despite the Celestials, I believe, being just a little bit faster than the Hedgehogs. Is there a way to actually tell what the speed... Oh, movement speed 709 versus... No, actually, the Hedgehogs are significantly faster than the Vanguards. I didn't realize that. I know they were able to get some good micro off, but I didn't realize how much faster the Hedgehogs were compared to the Vanguards.
Yeah, you're going to notice that Captain Alex and Denver both keep going into that speed camp, because if Captain Alex went into the speed camp and Denver didn't, you can see how much faster those vectors end up being.
Denver's actually in a really bad spot right here. He may get caught by these Kree. This is not super great for him. He's going to get pushed into his base. He's not going to be able to use the kiting advantage like he needs to, and the assault for Captain Alex is here. He thinks he has the forces to start taking out his opponent. Denver is not looking in a great spot. He does have defender's advantage, but I'm not sure how much that is going to matter because his economy is being destroyed by the Kree, and the Kree continue to push the Hedgehogs back further and further, and they're just not able to use their kiting and concave the way they want to. Sure, they're able to pick off units here and there, but not the units they want to pick off. They want to kill these Vanguards, and they're just not able to get to them. These Kree doing an amazing job pushing off their opponent, and he's going to start losing more and more infrastructure. Denver does have a Vulcan out, and that can start doing some damage, but it looks like Captain Alex is starting to go for the economy and start taking him where it hurts. Start hitting him in the wallet as quickly as he can. Bobs are going to try to heal himself to give themselves time to move in the fight, but I think it's going to be all for naught. Most of the forces for Denver are absolutely taken out here. Captain Alex is doing an amazing job focusing, killing his units, killing that Vulcan, which is one of his major threats, and I wouldn't be surprised if we actually get a GG, and there it is right on cue. Denver threw in the towel, giving Captain Alex another win in this match. Where do you think that went wrong, Prime?
I think Denver went a little greedy with his third base. I think he needed to get those additional mech bays up a bit sooner and go into Vulcan a bit faster. You saw those mech bays were just finishing when the fight started, and if he had had that extra production, maybe 1 or 2 extra Vulcans when the fight started, he'd be able to hold that easily with the Bob turret. But as it was, all he had was the Hedgehogs, which don't do bonus versus light, only the Vulcan does, and those Kree and Vectors are both light, and so he's not going to be able to deal as much damage as he was hoping.
Thank you for tuning in, Commander. I have been Korak. He has been Prime Scout. Transmission out.